Okay.
My name is Coach Thompson. I'm the owner of the Fairfax Football Academy, and I train and develop quarterbacks full time. And what that looks like is I work with 80 to 100 quarterbacks for most of the weeks a year, and I'm also a high school coach. And I thought it'd be real helpful to some quarterback parents out there and quarterbacks out there if I started to interview some of my quarterbacks and just get them to tell their journey. So the first that I've chose is a guy that I'm going to call my online quarterback, and you'll understand why. It's Matthew Abromson. Just completed a fantastic, historic season at WNL. You might know it as Washington and Liberty. And so just hang around. We're going to get to that part of it. But right now, Matthew, thanks for joining us. And I want to start with, are you an Arlington kid? Were you born in Arlington?
Yes, born and raised. Elementary school, middle school, everything Arlington. Yeah.
That's right. So for you guys outside of Arlington, this is a real Arlington thing of where you went to elementary school and where you went to middle school. So where'd you go to elementary school?
I went to Long Branch. It's right off 50. And then middle school, I went to TJ, also right off 50.
TJ. So I was a Glebe kid right off of Glebe Road and went to Swanson, but we both wound up at WNL. And tell me a little bit about the start to your sports career. What sport did you start playing first?
About second, third grade, I started with soccer, travel soccer through Arlington, and then I picked up flag football in about fourth grade, fifth grade. And those are my two main sports. I played flag football fall, spring, and I played soccer fall, winter, and spring. I think they went hand in hand with teamwork, and I just really love them both.
That's great. Now, there's more to this story. There's two names that come together, the Bajwani and Abromson.
Yeah.
We'll have another interview about that, hopefully. But just a little tease to that is that the fathers of these two quarterbacks, Jonathan Bajwani and Matthew Abromson, the fathers, were actually teammates at Chantilly High School. And they both wind up in Arlington with two sons, and they form a flag team. And this flag team was kind of legendary. Had a national tournament at one point. The little Arlington team that went down to Florida and had to play against all these big bad dudes from Texas and California and Georgia. Where was that tournament? What part of Florida?
I don't really remember it. I'm going to be honest.
Okay, do you remember who won? How did you guys do?
We didn't do the best because we were more of like a small team. We just knew like all the strategies.
Right.
We had our plays down to perfection, but it was just a bunch of kids, taller, bigger, stronger. We didn't really stand a chance, but we held our own.
Yeah, you did. And on that team, not only are there two future WNL quarterbacks that are going to go back-to-back historic seasons at WNL, but who were some of the other people on that team that you either wound up playing with or playing against as you got into high school? Were there any?
I really couldn't tell you. No one really played football. There was a couple guys that played lacrosse.
Okay.
Couple guys played basketball, but no one really played competitive varsity tackle.
So it was really just you and Jonathan off of that team that went on to play tackle? Okay.
Yeah, a couple kids went to private school, and I didn't really keep any contact with them.
Yeah, you know, that the public private school, that thing happens, you know.
Yeah, so it was just kind of me and John.
Yeah, now the time you go to that Florida tournament, what grade are you in? Do you remember? Were you 7th, 8th grade, 6th grade?
I think 7th.
7th, okay.
Yeah.
Now, you're approaching playing high school in Arlington. You can play high school football in 8th grade.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about playing football in 8th grade. And I was at, I think, John Bashwani's house, and he was going to play in 9th grade, and I just thought, like, I'd give it a shot. So I decided to play 8th grade football, like a week before the deadline. Had to sprint, like pay extra money to get my physical in. It was right after COVID, so it was in February. And I was like 115 pounds. I was not ready to play football, but I decided to play, and I'm glad.
And this is in your 8th grade year?
Yeah, it was in February, actually.
So how tall were you at the time?
I was 5'4".
5'4", 100 and what?
110, 115 pounds.
And you go to play 8th grade football at the high school or the
at the high school.
At the high school, okay.
Yeah.
So you go 8th grade year, and how was that first year for you?
It was tough. I always had like in mind that I would back up John just because he was about 30, 40 pounds more and 4 inches heavier. But I wanted to play. And if I was backup quarterback, I wouldn't get any playing time. So I played DB 8th grade year, and I got in for about one drive of Langley.
Okay.
That's the only time I ever saw the field.
Okay, that was your 8th grade year. Now, ninth
Yeah.
grade year, you move into WNL.
Yeah.
And for those of you out there, Washington and Lee is a school that's going to celebrate its 100th anniversary this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And recently there was a name change to Washington and Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not being politically correct when I say WNL. I'm just saying that because when I was there, that's how we always refer to the school, WNL. So it is Washington and Liberty now. I'm not trying to be politically correct, but I'm not giving up on my old habit of calling it WNL, okay? And it just happens that it kind of fits right down the middle. So you're excited. You go into your 9th grade year, you're entering high school. You go in the summer. Tell me about your freshman year in football.
Yeah, so I had the starting spot through like August. We had our first 2 scrimmages. It went great. I gained about 2 inches, maybe 10, 15 pounds. And then on the first drive against Chantilly, I broke my wrist, my left wrist. Yeah, I broke my left wrist. I got tackled by the legs as I was scrambling, and I hadn't really learned how to fall yet. I didn't really know it was a thing to like learn how to fall. But I landed right on my arm. I stuck my arm straight out, and my wrist just broke right under me.
Wow. And let me ask you a little bit. That was your first year. Well, it was your second year of contact football.
Yeah.
You done it in 8th grade. So you were kind of over that. You knew what it was.
Yeah.
You get hurt early in the season. So typically when those things happen, because football's such a long season, you have a chance to come back. Were you able to finish that season?
I came back healthy about week 5 or 6. But the other kid that was playing quarterback had done fairly well. And I never really got the spot back. I got a couple reps here and there, but it was pretty 50-50, and I never really was in an offense around like one quarterback. So it was a pretty interesting dynamic.
Okay. And things kind of changed because Jonathan, and we're going to explain the Boswani Abromson connection in another interview. We'll kind of hint to it here. But Jonathan's a year ahead of you. Yeah. And that year, you must have known that at some point Jonathan was looking to move to another high school. Did you learn that, or did you learn that later? What was the deal?
The freshmen, like JV kids, didn't really like practice a lot together in practice. So like their own about their record and the coaches, it wasn't like 100% clear. Like freshman was kind of isolated. We practiced on a different field. So at the end of the season, I heard about it. I heard his interest in other schools just because the varsity quarterback was a junior that year. So John probably wouldn't play next year.
Right.
But I wasn't really fully aware of all the information.
All the dynamics and that. Yeah. But John does move on. As you move into your sophomore year, John moves on to another school temporarily. And the Boswani story is not over at this point. But did that change your perspective of him? There's a guy in front of you that you kind of know it's going to be in front of you, and then at some point you learn that he's gone. Did that change your perspective on how you were looking at things, or?
Not really. I guess I wasn't really focused on that. I was just thinking about like doing the best that I could do. I knew that there was a senior when I was a sophomore, so I knew my chances on varsity were slim. And obviously I was going to play on JV, so I was really focused on that and not really worried about what John was doing.
Okay, so then you get to your JV year, and this is something I didn't know until we talked in kind of a pre-interview thing. How did your JV year go?
Well, sophomore year. This is different than junior year. So sophomore year, I think we went 4-4. We had a hard division. Westfield was good. Chantilly was good. West Springfield. And we had a bunch of new kids. We had, I think it was like 5 of our 11 offensive players were first-year players.
Okay.
So JV sophomore year, we went 4-4. It was a good year. I learned a lot. But, just another year.
All right. And now you're going into your junior year now. And you must have gotten news that Jonathan Boswani is coming back to WNL. Right? At some point.
Yeah.
All right. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know. I saw him as competition. Like he had just had a great season at West Potomac, but I wasn't like just like sitting back. I started working with you end of sophomore year.
Right.
I gained like 20 pounds. I was in the weight room a lot.
Right.
And there was a big flip between sophomore and junior year for sure.
Okay, in terms of how you approach, and
Yeah.
that's where we met. So you started out at 5'0" and 115 pounds. By this time, where are you in terms of your growth? And
Junior year, I was about 5'10", 145, 150. So still not that big, but
yeah, but I mean
lot
that's
better
a
than
big gain
110.
a big gain from 115.
Yeah.
Yes. And so you go into your junior year, John comes back, and there's
so
go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. So August, it's like 1A, 1B. Like he was getting the first reps, I was getting the second reps. 7-on-7, it was pretty split. But he had varsity time last year while I was a sophomore. So he was a lot more acclimated to the environment, and he had just played better in the scrimmages. We went 50-50. And first game, he starts, plays it all. And I was thinking to myself, coach offered to back him up. Just sit on the sideline for the whole season and get in when I could. But then I decided to play JV.
To get the reps, right?
Yeah.
And that was good. And how did that work out for you, Matthew? This is the part I'm getting to. How did that JV, that decision to get on the field and play, how did that work out for you? How many games did you lose that year?
0.
We
did pretty well, yeah.
And looking back on it, it kind of sets a table for what's about to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about it. Okay.
Yeah, I also I didn't have any interceptions either.
Okay. All right.
So
good.
I was confident going into senior year for sure.
Real confident. Now, you were also part of the varsity team in that year. We'll interview Jonathan about it, but that senior class at that point is posting a dramatically different season than anybody had posted at WNL in a long time, right?
50 or so years, yeah.
Yeah, it was like I remember hearing about it when they got off to the 4-0 start. Coach Shapiro lets me know that was the best start that the school had since I was a quarterback there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they go on to finish 9-1. The one game is an important thing, part of this story, too. But they finish 9-1. They win the district, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they host a playoff game against Westfield, where I was coaching at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And don't win that game. But and I want to get to this point. And I want to be delicate about it because it's not coaching thing. It's just inner player kind of business. I want to say this delicately. I would say the guys in your class were kind of salty about the finish, right? That you from the end of that season, your class was like, man, we could do more. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, you could feel like the energy in like the fourth quarter of Westfield game.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like sad to lose. It was more just like disappointed that everyone like thought we could have done more.
Okay. All right.
And that was just like the energy the whole off season. Like it's not going to happen again.
Right. And you guys take that into the next season. And this is getting where you and I kind of merge up. And while I work with a lot of quarterbacks, I only have the opportunity to actually physically coach a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to call you the online quarterback because this is kind of how things transpire. So you hear in the spring that I'm going to come over and coach. And just to share with your listeners, the listeners here, I had Coach Shapiro does a great job of just collecting WNL guys. We have no relationship other than the fact that he's the head coach there and he knows that I once played there. And he does a great job of just collecting these guys. And I was one of the guys he wanted to collect. When I looked at what Jonathan and those guys had done and the offense and the way it was being prosecuted, I told them that I didn't think that I could really add value being there on the field every day. But I told them what I could do was that if I had the quarterbacks, I could really, really get them ready to understand their offense, to understand their defense, to understand down distance time and score and be able to prosecute it. And that I would come to games and that would be, that kind of thing. So you learned of that relationship as we go down the pike. And now it's time for me to tell a funny story. On all the other schools that I've been in, except for Woodbury Forest, The summertime is when things kind of bear down. But when I got to Washington or WNL, I found out that they do things a little bit differently. They load up the spring, and they basically don't do anything during the summer. They have a pad camp, and I mean, they lift. The guys come up to the school. They're working regularly, but there's no structured outside team activity. And so when I said this to Coach Shapiro, in my mind, I'm going to get these quarterbacks June, July. I'm going to really get them ready. And I find out after pad camp, where do you go after pad camp? What trip did you take? No.
Oh, trip?
Yeah. Where'd you go?
Europe.
We're part of Europe.
Spain, maybe?
No, that was the second one. It was the first one. Your mom. You said your mom's sister's birthday?
We went to Croatia.
You can't even remember where you went.
Croatia and Croatia and Slovenia.
Croatia. Yeah. How was that? How was that?
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
And was that for your mom's?
Yeah, my mom and her twin sister had just turned 50 that summer.
Okay, good. And how long were you there? You were there for how long?
A week, maybe more, 9-10 days.
Yeah. And you are my second quarterback who's gone to Croatia.
Really?
Cody Rogers, who we're probably going to interview too, his now wife, he was dating at the time, she had relatives in Croatia, and he took her trip there. So after the Croatian trip, I'm excited because he's going to be home, and we're going to get down to this thing. And I remember talking to somebody. I said, I'm mapping this out. And they go, no, he's going out of the country. I said, he just went out of the country. He goes, no, he's going again. So where's your second trip?
Went to Spain.
Spain. And what part of Spain did you go?
Barcelona.
Okay, Barcelona.
I remember I was studying there.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to bring up.
Yeah.
At that point, I knew it was go time. There were 3 quarterbacks, including Matthew. Like, I had to get going. And the premise was that we were in the second year of a 2-year schedule. So everybody had played the year before. We were going to play again. And although Jonathan had a great season, he was gracious enough I asked him for permission. Could we use him as a template for everybody to learn off of? And so what we did is started going clip by clip. I'm about 2 or 3 clips per game and breaking everything down, the protection, the routes, how it's being defended, what was it down in distance. And I told the guys the price that I was charging for me doing that is that they had to respond, and 2, they had to do something. And say that was great, say it was trash, whatever it was. And you were in Spain when you started. You were 6 hours ahead, but you were looking at the stuff.
I definitely was.
And the third one, can you remember the third one that I sent out? You gave a particular response that was kind of funny to me.
Was it Lewis?
No, it doesn't matter what it was. It might have been Lewis, but you gave a particular response.
I'm not sure.
It's a long time ago, but you said, this is like a brand new offense. Do you remember? Okay. So explain, as I was giving this information to you, explain why that was your response. It was like a brand new offense.
I never had a true quarterback, like another quarterback coach to really like walk me through it the way you had. Just play by play, person by person on the field, writing notes, taking homework for football. And it just opened my eyes to the coverage. Like junior year, I wouldn't read the field. I would just see who was open, make guesses, I guess.
Yes.
And just like actually knowing every play, what to look for, coverages. I remember like middle of field closed, and I was like, what does this even mean?
Yes.
And then at the end of the year, like I was like trying to analyze that in the game.
Right.
And it was just reading the field and making like educated and like really knowing what I was talking about and not just making like stuff up as I go. It was just like a whole new sport.
Well, that's great. And that was the intention of it. And my background of doing that was I had for 7 years or so, because at the high school level, you don't have position meetings. In college, you do, pros, you do. Right. And you guys, by the time you get off the field, it's the back end of a very, very long day. So you can imagine keeping you for another 20 or 30 minutes, like that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So for about 6 or 7 years, I had gotten in the habit of when the practice tape went up, looking at a couple clips, finding a way to voice over, illustrate it, and getting it to the quarterback. So that's how I rolled into this thing.
Yeah.
And I knew how helpful that was to quarterbacks. So
Yeah.
now there's something else I want to ask you before we both. I'm giving you all this extra work, right? This is more work than you've done before.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
I just incorporated it as any other work. Like when the school year came around, I just added it to like my homework tab. In the beginning, it was difficult, but it kind of just became like nature, just like something I had to do every day, like a daily task.
Okay.
Just analyze the next game ahead and go on.
Okay. So we get through the summer. I think we did a pretty good job of getting through close to 10 games before practice started, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
Wait,
now
10? You would just text me. Like I told you, text me whenever you're free.
Yeah.
And you'd come to W now.
Yeah. And then you got through those 10 games to those clips. And I also made you, on top of that, I made you guys, I said, we need a daily huddle habit. So we added right to getting you looking the huddle. So you guys knew I was checking everything.
Yeah.
You did a great job. And then we had to talk about before school started that you're going to have to reserve that time because, summer it's easy. Yeah. But you're going to have to manage your time in a way that time was still there once school started. You did that. Okay, so then we go through. Then when practice starts and we're getting into for that first kind of scrimmage thing, I start taking you through the pace of how to break down film or what we're looking at as we're going into a game. So you had 2 weeks of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to bring up the Fairfax scrimmage. The Chantilly scrimmage wasn't great. Sorry, but the Fairfax scrimmage, Fairfax scrimmage was better. And I'm going to bring up something that I noticed from a coaching standpoint. There was a play in the Fairfax game scrimmage where our backs are to Washington Boulevard, and you throw a little screen or something, and you didn't see the defensive end, and he jumped in front of it. It's a pick six. And I remember hearing in the phones because I'm getting to know you, and we get the ball back again, and I hear they dial one up. And in my head, I'm going, oh, no, we need an easy completion now. And they dialed it up, and you went down, you stroked it down the middle for a touchdown.
Yeah, it was like a slant.
Yes, it was a cross. And that was really important for me getting to understand you because despite your pleasant demeanor, we talk about pace, right? Play after critical error. And here it was. I see a quarterback early in this process make a big mistake, just lazy with his eyes, and it results in pick six. And then the very next play, I see him shoot this thing down the middle with confidence, and we get 6 points. So that was something, I didn't know if you know that, but that was something that I marked about you. And I said, okay, we got something that we can work with here. All right. Now, I want to take you downward to the part we're going to go through the season. Okay. And with you, the biggest thing I kind of paid attention to, I learned as a quarterback coach, was the emotional components of the game. I always knew that they were there. But with you, they were very, very tangible emotional moments, right? And it believe me, it made me a better coach. So we roll through the first couple of games. You got a completion percentage. By the way, I'll stop right here. Matthew finishes the season with close to 3,000 yards passing, 33 or 35 touchdowns. They'll get more as they go on, and 68% completion percentage. I mean, it's an outstanding year. And he's rolling at an 80% clip in these completion percentages, and we're going. So the first big one that comes up is those people from across town, right? And just a year before, Jonathan and that crew had gone over to their place, and a very dramatic last-minute type of play of the game got one from them, right? So they come over there. They're loaded for bear. We have a weird kind of Saturday afternoon start time.
Yeah, it was bright outside. The
they had vandalized the field, right?
Yeah,
they vandalized the field.
Yeah.
And you guys just lay one on them. One on them, right? Just really 40-something to very little at halftime, correct? Right. So it's a great emotional thing to get across. And then the next week we have Falls Church. Okay. Now, do you have any particular memories about the Falls Church? Because I do.
I remember they scored the first drive.
No. Start at the very beginning in the warm-ups.
You
You weren't feeling very well.
Yeah, I was sick. I'd been
You
sick.
were sick.
Yeah.
And I was watching the warm-up, and the warm-up's not going the way that it should. And I'm off to the sideline. And you don't know this, but one of the coaches came up to me, and they go, what's wrong with him? I told, get away. I said, I'm going to talk to him in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's this thing that we had to talk that you were kind of feeling a little sorry for yourself. It's not the right word, but you know what I mean. You were sick, right?
Yeah.
And we had a little talk about that.
Mm-hmm. It was a very stern talk. I remember.
It was a very stern
Not
talk.
like these exact words, but you were like, you said something like, I don't really care.
Right.
Like, and I needed to hear it. I needed to hear it. And it's not like it flipped any switches, but it's just something I needed to know and hear and realize, like, it didn't really matter that I was sick. I mean, we had a game in 30 minutes.
You were well enough to be there.
Yeah, I wasn't too sick, but
right, you weren't too sick, but you were just in that thing where you're feeling about the self. And I think what I emphasized to you is that there were other guys out there that doing it, and I told you about that. And here's a good thing about another point about you. I think we had 2 stern talks during the year, and that was one of them. The other one was about a mechanics thing that we had to get fixed, and I'll go back to that really quick. But I can say whatever I want, but you have to be coachable. You were always willing to receive that message. And then go on. And again, in that game, the pace thing comes up again because in the first part of that game, there were some easy things that you missed. You completed some, but there were some easy things that you missed. And with the correction, you turned around, we're going the other direction, and you killed it. You killed it. Absolutely killed it. Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm watching that pace thing again. While we're here about tough conversations, this happened a little bit further. There was a mechanical thing that you were doing. And I didn't understand why you were resisting so much. But when you told me you were 8-0 as a JV player, I begin to understand why you're resisting so much. Because you had success, right?
Yeah.
This is a very human thing. When an athlete has success and is pretty confident, it is tough to hear somebody say, hey, you need to change this because it's better, right?
Yeah.
And you were resistant to it.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And it was just something I was doing. Like the ball was like pointed down,
right,
or pointed up, and
right.
It wasn't like I didn't want to fix it. It's hard to fix it. Like you got to put going full speed in the game. Like that's the last thing you're worried about. But
right, and it takes that extra work, and that's the thing that's really hard for those athletes, right? I have this thing. I know I can get the ball to where it needs to be, but I was saying, like, if you get this thing fixed, another door is going to open for you.
Yeah, I remember.
Go ahead.
I remember it was like the 3rd week, and I think I had like 100% completion rate, like 92, and we had like a conversation about like the ball placement, and I was thinking to myself like, come on, like I had like a 94% completion rate,
right?
And like 3 of the balls like could have been better,
right?
And I was just thinking like, okay, like this is really serious, or something like I really got to like step it up.
Yeah, because I that was another stern talk, right? I got it in your face a little bit, and I said, hey, either we're going to do this thing or not.
Yeah.
And to your credit, again, you fixed it, and it did open up another door.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. And it's not a matter of me like I told you so. It was just this thing that was going to help you. And to your credit, right, you said, okay, I'll resolve to work on this and get this thing fixed. And so it was really good. All right. Yeah. So we get Yorktown, we go through the Falls Church game, and then next up is the Herndon game.
Yeah.
Now, for you guys out there that don't know, the year before, the school finished 9-1. And this loss was against Herndon. It was overtime at home. It was a game in which WNL had the lead. And when you go back and look at the film, there's multiple opportunities for WNL to win the game, but they didn't. Yeah. And then on this final play,
double overtime.
Yeah, overtime, going toward the boulevard. To run to the right, and it so much was a touchdown that if you stop the clip at the right time, you can see Herndon players hanging their head. You can see WNL players with their hands raised, but you'll also see one Herndon player looking down at the ground because that's where the ball is. He fell on it, and they won, and there was some chirping and everything else going back and forth, yes? And so players from both teams were talking about this particular game. And I remember the WNL guys that come out, they so talked about this game. I never mentioned to them. I was like, are y'all forgetting about Yorktown? That was in my mind. So anyway, we go into this game. You're jacked up. Everybody's jacked up.
Yeah, it was a hard game.
You're at your own end, and what happens?
I threw a pick. It was like a bad return. We were on the 8-yard line. I'm like running out to the field for first down and just like so overwhelmed.
Okay.
Wasn't seeing anything. Hands a little shaky.
Okay, so did it start from that moment?
What?
Your response, your emotional response. So did it
there's the anticipation built up right there.
Okay, all right. So let me take this aside because I'm going to tell you Coach Thompson's view. So one of my dreams when I go to the games, I'm a coach who's better up top than I am on the sideline. Coaches prefer things. I prefer to be up top because I can see and I can convey information. Now, one of my dreams has always been that when I go to these games, I get that thing you see in the pro games, where the window and they have their little Coke and the pens and the thing. But most of the booths that we go into are too small, and I always have to go up top. So we go to the Herndon game. They have a big press box. And matter of fact, one whole side is for the visitors.
Yeah.
So when we get in there, I shoot right to my chair. Not only that, but they had the windows can sometimes obstruct your view. Mm-hmm. This window was perfect. It was there, and it was a little warm, and they had a fan, right?
I never knew this.
So they had a fan. So they had a fan. I'm good. Coach Ludwig's going up top. I go, Coach, I'm sitting right here. And I knew some people in the stands that said, can you get me a Coke? I'm living the dream. And as the game goes on, I hear over the phones, hey, who's going in for Matthew? And I go, what happened to Matthew? And somebody says, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody says he's sensitive. And I go, I'm not going to cuss. I go, I'm effing sensitive. And I slam my headphones down. Yeah. And I go down and walk around the side. And to credit to Tyler, Tyler goes in. You and I meet on the sideline.
Yeah.
And you go in the next series. But you're still not 100% right. It was an emotional response, an anxiety response to something happened. And we'll talk about how it got resolved. But you and I are still talking to the sidelines between possessions, and we end the half, and it's 12-7. They have a 5-point lead.
It was close. It was really close. But
it was 12-7. I remember because I told you. And then it went into I pulled you out of the locker room, right? You and I sat under a tree. There's a park bench there. And and slowly kind of getting you to a state where I could say something to you. Mm-hmm. And I did say something to you. Do you remember? You don't have to repeat it, but I got in your face a little bit.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, and then you went back out, and you had a fantastic second half, right?
Yeah.
And we win the game.
Yeah.
And that was a game where, and we talked about it. I remember I checked on you the next day, Saturday, make sure you're okay.
That's good.
Okay, right? And then Sunday I called you again. I don't know if I'm supposed to call you on Sunday, but I called you on Sunday. And the reason I did was it dawned on me what had happened. And remember, and I told you what had happened. You said, Coach, you're spot on. That you would have these dreams of doing really fantastic things on the football field, but you didn't have the other dream where it's a bad scenario and you get up off the mat and you're the hero, right?
Is that wrestling?
No, it's just the mat. Yeah, the mat. Yeah, I'm a former wrestler. Yeah, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That you hadn't had the other dream. So when that happened, it was kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
So you got through that. It was wonderful. We got through a win. And later on, I gave you a compilation of all your throws in that game. That was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you quarterbacks out there, there's a huge emotional component to this thing that you have to manage. And your perspective on it really, really matters. And Matthew, as he was fighting through this emotional response to a bad play, you actually made a worse play in the second half. You had a pick six in the second half.
No, that was the first half.
No, the first half it was a short field and they scored. Yeah, it's on tape.
Was it the first drive?
Yeah, it was the first drive.
The end was like 6-7.
Yeah, they just got a short field. But in the second half, you actually threw a pick six.
Yeah.
And that just shows you how far you had come because it didn't rattle you like the way the first one did. So anyway, for quarterbacks out there, managing your emotions is a huge component of this thing. So we get past Herndon, right? And then we get to Marshall. Mm-hmm. Now remember Marshall.
Not really.
Well, in the beginning,
you
came out and you met me at the sideline. And you said, Coach, I am I am ready. And
Yeah.
I go, okay, let's go get it. And that first drive, I'll tell you, and Coach, there's a reason why he'll say he can't remember, is the first drive, he was seeing the field clearly and just making all great decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And just like butter went down the field. And I remember thinking as a coach, because Marshall was primarily a running team.
Yeah.
I said, if we have a second drive like that and put 2 on them really quick, we get a stop defensively, and we get a second drive like that and put 2 up them, that would have been 14-0. Before half the first quarter was over. That was going to be a very difficult game for Marshall to come back from. But you come off the sideline, and I see you sitting next to Mike, and I think I lost you. I'm calling you again.
Yeah, good.
Can you hear
me?
Yeah, I
Yes,
got
sir.
you now. And you were sitting next to Mike, and I went over to you, and you were complaining that you couldn't remember a single thing about the drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd hit my head somewhere in the drive.
Yeah.
Towards the beginning, I think.
Yeah, it was a particular run. And just for those people that are freaking out about concussions and things like this was such a kind of nonchalant type of thing that we had to really slow the film down and figure out exactly what happened. And it was a run. You were tackled. You're going down. I mean, the tackle's almost over. But at the last 6 inches of the tackle, your head kind of pops off the turf.
Yeah, it was almost my fault. So I was running. There had been a big pile, and I thought the play was over, and I kind of like untense. I kind of like stand up.
Mm-hmm.
And then some kid, like it's football, like I totally understand, he comes in and he knocks the pile over.
Yeah.
And my head hits back.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was a big learning moment just to like it's a football field, like, you know what I mean? So from then on, like finish your run, like go down, like don't stand up ever.
Yeah. And it was funny that you were sitting there. You could remember all kinds of things. I think it was your birthday. Was it your birthday that happened?
It was my birthday.
You remembered your birthday. You could remember everything, but you couldn't remember what happened on the drive. And it was driving you crazy.
I remember I scored, and I was like talking to coach. Like he high-fived me, and I was like, it's not safe for me to go in. Like I don't remember anything that just happened.
Right.
Like I remember like breaking down the huddle, and I remember like the first like running onto the field, but then after that it went like completely blank.
Yeah, that was great. And then there's long time on the side. So again, needing everybody. Jackson Cogan went in and did a great job.
Yeah.
The running game went crazy that game.
Yeah.
Right? And it just went absolutely bunk because they were so worried about the pass game. They never really adjusted. And, our quarterbacks have a lot of decisions to make when it comes. It's not really the play calling. There's the plays that are in, and there's multiple options on the play. And so Jackson just made all the right decisions, and the running backs went crazy, and we wound up winning that game. Now, next up, I remember you coming out at halftime. You felt so much better coming out at halftime that you come over the sideline and go, Coach, I'm ready to go in. I'm ready to go in. And just to let parents know, no coach is going to let a player in after that happens. But you felt much better coming out, which is the main thing.
Yeah.
Then as things go, we had a bye. Right. So you have ample time to kind of recover and do those types of things. And we play McLean. I don't really remember anything memorable about the McLean game. Do you?
It was our defense had a really good game. So I had the ball a lot, and it wasn't my best game. I think like I hadn't played in 3 weeks really because the bye week, and then the week. So it's been like 3 whole weeks.
Right.
My confidence was a little low. But I remember like we won. It was good, but it wasn't. I was still a little bit like nervous. I don't know. I just had a concussion. Someone else had played quarterback the week before.
Right.
But we won. It was a good game.
Okay, good. And then we move on to Langley. Now the Langley game and the way the conference stuff goes, they had 1 loss, and we were undefeated in the conference. So if we lose to Langley, it would have been a co-district championship. So there was stuff on the line for the Langley game, right? And if I remember, it wasn't great. No, Langley we faced at their place. We went over there again. It was an odd start, right? A weird Saturday afternoon thing. And
it's like at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, tough game. You went a little bit crazy that game, and Malatesta went a little bit crazy that game.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So it was a good game there, and that kind of gets us in position for the final game, which is against Wakefield. And that was a culmination game, right? And multiple things. Kings of Arlington County, yes.
Yeah.
Back-to-back district champions.
Yeah.
And also an undefeated district champion, right?
Yep.
Right? Okay, so good.
Yep.
And then we go into the playoffs. We get Yorktown again. They have to come back over. So that was fun. It was fun beating them again. Yes.
Shut out.
Okay. Yeah. I'll let you bring that up. You go ahead. Okay. And then we roll into the regional championship game. And this is where this is two historic achievements. There was the first time that a WNL team had finished the season undefeated since 1956. That was what everybody said. So that was a district. And then to get to 12 wins was more wins than a WNL team had ever had in the season. And then to get to the regional championship game, that was the first time since 1975 since WNL had been to the regional championship game. And again, a kind of full circle moment for me, because as I'm coming up through Arlington, those guys that were on the 75 team, Coach Rimmer, Eric Sievers, and that crew, and Darnell Wilkinson, all those guys, those were the guys that I looked up to as I was entering WNL. And then we go to the regional championship game. Great first half. Yeah, great first half.
Halftime. Yeah.
Third quarter went Madison's way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't go our way. And then
Happens.
and then we've talked several times about your last two drives in the fourth quarter. Yes, they had the game in control, that type of thing. But the way you operated as a quarterback was really, really showing something, that you had command of what was going on and you can manipulate things to get what you want. And those are really impressive things. All right. So looking back on it, and you told me something I want to tell you. When we met in the summer, I remember asking you, hey, do you want to play in college? And your answer was no.
Right.
And then I remember thinking to myself, oh, my gosh, this is a quarterback that, like a lot of quarterbacks would kill to be in this offense.
Yeah.
And I got a guy who's taken 2 European trips. And I'm like, he's telling me, I don't want to play in college. And I'm like, I wonder what he's playing for. And you told me the other day, the thing that you played for all the time was your community. Yeah.
I just I was playing with all my friends, my best friends, and just coming to school, wearing my jerseys in school, really like representing. The stands were packed. We sold out almost one game. The kids on the team, we put up flyers to like advertise our game. The janitors would like high five me. Some teachers who like were big football fans would like see number 8, they'd high five me. And I wasn't really playing for like college or anything, just like for my school, I guess I would say.
Yeah. No, that was really wonderful. Like I said, when you said that to me, I go, man, I didn't understand it, but we just went with it and just watched how you worked. And then I'm watching you compete. And actually there was a point in the season where you called me up and you said, hey, coach, I know it's kind of late, but how's this recruiting thing work, right? And I told you what to do, and you got a couple responses. But ultimately, this is football for you, right? This is where it is, and you're going to go on and do some really, really great things. And by the way, you're not my only quarterback who has decided that the college type of football isn't for them. And I'm going to have some of those guys on because they had great high school careers. A lot of fun. And by the way, a lot of ups and downs in some of them. But at the end of the day, they decided, hey, I want to go be a student, and I'm going to do that. And by the way, talk about being a student. Where have you been accepted to?
I'm going to Virginia Tech.
Going to Virginia Tech. Committed.
Committed.
Congratulations. And that's big, not only because it's Tech, but you have family at Tech. So who else in your family has gone to Tech?
Yeah, my dad's brother, my aunt, cousin, maybe 4 or 5 relatives that have all gone to Tech.
So
my cousin's there right now.
UVA didn't stand a chance.
Definitely
not a chance. Well, congratulations, Matthew.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your story. I miss seeing you every day, but I'm
calling.
I'm sure I'm going to bug you as much as you allow me. Thanks for sitting down and being the first interview.
Yeah.
of many. Okay. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you, Coach Thompson.
All right. Bye-bye.